Hi guys. So this video is about component-driven development combined with Storybooks. And this approach of developing UI and design is something that we learned this year at Operately. And since then, it has accelerated our design flow. And I think we have unlocked some real productivity gains with implementing it Operately. So first of all, I want to address who is this video meant for. I'm primarily recording this video to the team at Superplane. I hope that any other team can benefit from it, but the primary audience is Superplane. Basically, as a continuation of our discussion with Lucas on Friday, where we have covered a bit about Storybooks and how we integrated it in Operately, how we are testing out stuff, how we are developing, how we are shipping stuff. I didn't want that conversation to live only between Lucas and me. So basically, I'm recording this for the whole team to be aware of, and I think this information could be very useful for Alex, Pedro, and Petar. So I think you might benefit from the information that I'm sharing here. So first of all, before we start, I would want to share some of the key benefits that we gain from adopting component-driven design and Storybooks in Operately. So one of the primary benefits is that any change that we make in the design system is automatically applied to the production. Basically, we are no longer having a separate design repository that is out of sync with the rest of the application. We have a component system that is built into the application, built into the source code of the application. And whenever you make some mistake, whenever you are making some modifications, those modifications are directly applied to the running application. The second thing is, with this component-driven design, I think we have unlocked additional productivity gains when it comes to AI-driven development. The reason for this is that components are now completely self-isolated. They're not talking with the API. They are not talking with the database. And basically, their context is much smaller and much more easy to navigate with AI. I think you would be surprised at the breadth and the depth that AI can go and basically build out complete pages or completely new flows in the application. The third benefit is that every component is well documented. So we basically have a design system for Operately that is basically coming free with this system. And the fourth thing is that every state in every component, like buttons, starting from buttons to like complete pages, are documented in every state that they can appear. For example, buttons can appear in various states like loading state, error state, pushing state, so on. The pages can also be available in multiple states. These are the main benefits. I would mention two smaller ones. Like one is, of course, that the application and the design are now never really out of sync. I'm talking about an experience where, let's say, you are building a design system in a completely separate repository, but that design system is not directly imported into the application, but there is an engineer who is basically rewriting those components into the application. This is losing time and losing out on the details. If you make some subtle details in the design system, they might not be necessarily implemented in the application, which is you're just losing time and momentum and the ability to affect change in that application. Second smaller thing, whenever you see some copy change or the application is not friendly enough at some places, you can directly go into the design system, change the copy, deploy it, and then it is automatically available to customers. So before I start out, I want to cover some theory about what component-driven design is. And the component-driven design is basically an idea where you are building bigger and bigger components from smaller and smaller components. But to be more specific in our use case, because this idea is widespread in the software engineering industry. So basically, you are building out avatars, buttons, I don't know what it says here, tooltips, and combining into bigger elements, and then finally combining into like complete pages, like the home page, the setting page, the profile page. The important thing is that all of these components, including the pages, are completely stateless elements. For engineers, this means a lot because the API is not connected, the database is not connected. You don't need to worry about so much things that you usually worry about up to this state. when you reach this state that you have like complete pages, the next step is to just wire into those pages specific API endpoints, caching, various data into the page, and just integrate it into application. Currently in Operately, we are basically on this level when we are integrating the API. We are not really introducing any new API, any new UI change in the application, and we are striving to keep all of our UI elements outside and just plugging into the API and the data. So that is the theory, but one can ask, like, what do you do in the practice? In practice, we have two separate components in our Operately source code. One is called the Turbo UI. Turbo UI is a collection of UI elements. So basically, avatars, button, callouts, checklists, colors, data fields, various other things that are completely stateless, and they are disconnected from the main web application. So it means that they cannot, even if they want to, access the API. Everything needs to be stateless, and you are basically forcing your team to adopt good practices and to make every component like testable, visually testable, and so on. So these are these three layers. On the fourth level, that is the only place where we are involving the web application and basically taking things from Turbo UI and plugging it into our Phoenix-based Elixir application. So I already showed this. This is the source code that contains all of our components. It's located in Operately Turbo UI source. And every component has a so-called storybook attached to it. So Storybooks is a new thing. I don't know if you've ever tried it before, but storybooks are basically a way to write, let's say, visual tests for your component, so this is coming from an engineering perspective. I'm building visual tests. From a designer's perspective, this is about creating a design system. So let's look how it actually looks in Operately. For example, the simplest component that we have is an avatar. And when you visit the avatar, you can see like what are the inputs to the avatar, how the data is looking, what are the states with the default state, with images, without images, what are the sizes, how it looks when you have names, so on and so on. You can see them in this documentation format, or you can see them in like individual formats like these. Let me try to map this theory to the storybooks. So basically, these two components, these two levels, so the basic building blocks and the combined elements, we are basically just storing them into components. We have components for everything here that we use in Operately. While for pages, we are separating them into separate sections when you have like our goal page or our project page or the task page and so on. So let's jump back here and discuss some of the benefits that you get with Storybooks. So the first benefit I will mention is that every component that you have in your system for us at Operately is well defined and well documented. So for example, if a new engineer joins Operately, they can jump into the Storybooks and see, okay, how we are doing tabs. Let's look at the tabs. So this is how they look with counts. This is how it looks. Okay, let me say I want links. How it looks, with no underlines, with hovered underlines, with ghost links, and so on and so on. These are simple components, but we also have like more complex components like this one, which can be in the update mode, the edit mode, the delete mode, the read-only mode, and add more mode. So it is, as you can see, it is very easy to me to guide you through all the states for this one component. If you previously didn't have like strong discipline, constructing all of these states for a specific component, you would maybe jump around tests, or I don't know how you even construct this without having storybooks. I guess there are some other ideas, but storybooks are a great way to document this, which helps both in development as you are developing this and designing this out to be aware of all the states that you have. It helps when you are making modifications. For example, if I do some change, I don't know, in the image here, how would it affect all other modes? Like, am I breaking them or are they safe for production? If you don't have all the states, it is very hard to judge. let's go to the, I think I covered benefit 2, so you basically have all the states defined. The benefit 3 is that because these components are not just a design system completely separate from our application, whatever change you make in these components, and you merge them to the main branch, in our case, will automatically show up in the application. So if I make, let's say, a copy change in the application, like this doesn't make sense to call it name or something, like this is not a good value, I can easily change it, review it in a pull request, ship it to production. There is no disconnect between how a design is looking and how the application itself looks, which is a great benefit for operating. Let's touch upon this last step because it can be the hardest part in adopting this. So whenever you have a system that automatically applies to production, the good thing about that is that your development cycle is very fast. Like whatever change you make, it automatically goes into production. The bad thing about this, that you need to keep in mind as engineers, is that whatever change you make, it will end up in production, including breaking production visually, breaking production functionality-wise, breaking production, performance-wise. So for these reasons, I really recommend using pull request. I think you are already doing that, of course. But for example, if a designer or a PM are doing changes to the design system or to the copy, I would really encourage them to use pull request. And then if everything visually looks good, then an engineer can take over just to verify that, okay, we are not making mistakes, we are keeping things consistent. Of course, if you have automated tests for everything in your application, it really helps because even the PMs and even the designers can very easily catch if you have some problems. I think that's it, but I don't want to leave you at this. I want to give you like a set of good tips and, let's say, some guide how to do this. So the first thing I would recommend you is to create a dedicated component library. Don't do it in your web application. For example, in Operately, we already had components. They were part of the application. If I go here, JS components, we already had this. What is the big problem of this? It is very easy to connect all of these components to the API and to the database and to any stateful thing. And if these components are connected to those things, first, it is very hard to think about the component because you need to keep in mind all the API details, everything else. The AI agents won't work as good. And writing storybooks with, things that are communicating over the network is just super hard. So for that reason, I really recommend creating a dedicated component library for yourself. That is the first thing that I would say. The second thing is that what I would share is to make sure to have storybooks always deployed. So whenever we merge to the master branch, we automatically deploy to this Cloudflare web application. This is a static page that you just ship all the components, and it is a simple and easy way to share all the components and all the visual styles with the rest of the team without the need for them to pull down the application locally and then run and spin it up. Let's go to the next tip. How to generate preview versions of every pull request. So apart from that, whenever someone creates a pull request, for example, Marco is creating a pull request here that is doing some visual changes to the task page. If I come down here and click on Cloudflare pages and I open the preview URL, I will get a specific web application just for this version of the Storybooks. So if Marco made any changes here, I don't need to pull down the application. I can just open this page, review what's written in the pull request, and just easily, visually verify if everything is good or not. Going to the third tip. Invest time in good external interfaces. Whenever you are creating components in, let's say, your component library, every component will have an external interface that is basically defining how that component is interacting with the rest of the system. If you don't pay attention how you write these external interfaces, you can make your whole application quite a lot messy. You can introduce very bad practices that are very hard to fix. And mocking or creating storybooks for components that don't have a good external interface is just super hard. Let me show you an example of goal page, what I'm talking about. So on the goal page, if I go to the index, all of this is what I call an external interface of the goal page, starting from the props. We paid quite a lot of attention that these things make sense. They are done pulling in all the stuff, basically the kitchen sink plus extra, just to display this page. We are specifically requesting these links that we need. We are specifically requesting functions that, I'm requesting a person and I want a function that is able to set a new person for the champion. But as you can see, I'm not writing to the API. I make those functions very stateless, very easy to consume, both in Storybooks and both in our application. So third tip, pay attention to that. Fourth tip, start right away with an agents MD file. AI agents are remarkably good at creating UI interfaces. But if you don't have this agents MD file in your, let's say, component library in Turbo UI, they will most likely end up creating very generic interfaces, not really following your color scheme, your design philosophies, your, every small detail that you pay attention to. And you are basically reducing the effectiveness of these AI tools. My advice is write down everything. Whenever you are building something in your application, make sure to, if something fails or visually doesn't look good, jump to the agents MD file. Extend that agents MD file with additional documentation. Why that change that he did was not good, and slowly build up a library of, let's say, documentation in your agents MD, just to make your whole team more productive at building these visual things. Tip number 5. This applies to applications that already have a component library. Like for us, it was in the application asset JS folder components. We already had kind of an component library. These were not good. These were very closely tied to the API calls. But if you are in that state, I would advise you to start small. Start small and basically first convert these stuff like avatars, buttons, inputs, tooltips, move them to your component library. Start doing that. Start learning about Storybooks. Define all the states for the avatars, define all the states for the buttons, define all the states for the tooltips. These are the easy stuff. Writing Storybooks for these will be a breeze. Then as you cover that, move on to this level, and finally move on to the complete pages. So that's the third tip of, let's say, how to go from zero to actually using this system. Tip number 6, I think, is just a repeat of everything else I said. Make a conscious choice to never, in any direct or indirect form, include the API or the data layer in your component library. It makes life 10 times harder. Any change that you make, you need to double think everything that you are making. Create your external interfaces very simple to be implemented in Storybooks. So that means if you want to change something on the page, just say set this, pass that function into it. Don't try to reach out to an API. Don't try to be too smart. Be conscious about not relying on that layer. And one good way of making sure that you're not relying on that layer is to write a storybook, because storybooks don't have an API. And then if it works in the storybooks, it is most likely very decoupled from your application. I think this is all that I have. I hope that all of this information is useful for you. I hope that you have now more in-depth knowledge of how we structured our system, why we put all of these things to the component library, and why we are just integrating on the web layer, and so on and so on. Of course, reach out to me if you have any questions or feedback or follow-up, and so on and so on. So have a nice evening, and let me know. Bye.